welcome. When you think about it, life on Earth is just, well, it's an explosion of variety. We're talking millions upon millions of species. So today, we're going to talk about how we try to make sense of all that beautiful chaos. Let's get into biological classification.
Right, so that's the big question, isn't it? How do you even begin to sort every living thing on the planet into some kind of logical system? It's a huge puzzle scientists have been working on for centuries, and the story of how they've tried to solve it is, well, it's pretty fantastic. So our journey starts with the first real attempts to build a scientific map for all of life. And believe me, it didn't start out as complicated as it is today. In fact, the first system was super simple. Maybe a little too simple, as it turned out. Okay, so let's hop in our time machine back to the 1700s. The brilliant naturalist Carl Linnaeus comes up with the two-kingdom system. You've got kingdom Plantae for the plants and kingdom Animalia for the animals. That's it. It's really intuitive, right? If it's green and stays put, it's a plant. If it moves around and eats stuff, it's an animal. Simple.
But here's the thing about science. It never stops asking questions. And as our tools, especially the microscope, got way better, that simple system started to fall apart. All of a sudden, we had all these new organisms that just didn't fit. I mean, where do you put bacteria? And what about mushrooms? They don't move, but they don't make their own food either, so are they really plants? The whole system just couldn't handle the weird new stuff we were finding. It was clear we needed a better map.
And that brings us to the hero of our story, a scientist who looked at all this confusion and proposed a totally new way of thinking, a framework that really laid the foundation for how we see the world today. So flash forward to 1969. An American biologist named R.H. Whittaker comes along and says, look, we need to think deeper. He said we shouldn't just look at what something does, but what it is. He focused on really fundamental stuff, its basic cell structure, how it gets energy, and this is the big one, its evolutionary relationships. And using those criteria, he built a much more solid five-kingdom system. And bam, here it is. This chart is basically Whittaker's masterpiece. You can see how it solves all the old problems. He made a brand new kingdom, Monera, just for those simple prokaryotic organisms like bacteria. He created Protista to be a home for all the single-celled eukaryotes, and fungi, they finally got their own kingdom, defined by their unique cell walls made of chitin. This table, right here, this is the key that unlocked a much better way of seeing life.
So what's really cool is that this new system gave us 3 whole new kingdoms for life that's mostly invisible to the naked eye. I mean, we all know what plants and animals are, so for the rest of our time, let's take a quick tour through those other 3 amazing kingdoms.
First up, Kingdom Monera. This is home to all the prokaryotes. Now, all that means is that their cells are really simple. They don't have a true nucleus wrapped in a membrane. Bacteria are the big shots here. And get this, they are the most common microorganisms on the planet, and they represent some of the oldest forms of life we've ever found. And don't ever think simple means boring. Within just this one kingdom, the variety is staggering. Just look at their shapes. We've got the little spherical ones called cocci, the rod-shaped bacilli, the comma-shaped vibrio, and these cool spiral ones called spirilla. They're tiny, yeah, but they are absolutely everywhere, in pretty much any shape you can imagine. All right, next up, Kingdom Protista. Now, I love this one. Biologists sometimes call it the junk drawer kingdom, and that's because it's basically the category for any eukaryote, an organism with a complex cell and a real nucleus that isn't obviously plant, an animal, or a fungus. It's a total grab bag of fascinating misfits. And this slide just shows you how wild that diversity is. On the left, that's a euglena. It can actually make its own food from sunlight, just like a plant. And on the right, that's a paramecium, which actively swims around and hunts for food with thousands of tiny hairs. They're both single-celled eukaryotes, but they couldn't be more different. That's Kingdom Protista for you. Okay, our third microkingdom is one you're definitely familiar with, fungi. This kingdom is full of heterotrophs, which is just a fancy way of saying they get energy by consuming other things. But here's the twist. Unlike animals, they absorb their nutrients, and their big claim to fame is a cell wall made of a tough material called chitin, not cellulose like you see in plants. So what's their deal? Well, fungi are basically nature's ultimate cleanup crew. They are what we call saprophytes, breaking down dead stuff and recycling it.
Sure, some are parasites, but others are amazing partners, forming symbiotic relationships like lichens, which are actually a fungus and an alga living together. And from the yeast that makes your bread fluffy to the mold that gives us penicillin, their impact on our world is just massive.
Now, here's where it gets really weird. It turns out that even Whittaker's amazing 5 kingdoms can't quite capture everything. There are these entities out there that are so strange they make us question what it even means to be alive. First up, viruses. You've heard of them. At their core, they're just a bit of genetic code, DNA or RNA, wrapped up in a protein shell. The reason they don't get a spot in the kingdoms is because, well, they're not really alive in the way a cell is. They can't do anything on their own. They have to hijack a living cell just to make more of themselves. You think that's simple? Get a load of the viroid. This thing, discovered back in 1971, is even more stripped down. It's literally just a tiny, naked loop of RNA. No protein coat, no furls. Just a piece of infectious genetic code causing diseases mostly in plants. Wild.
And then we have the prions. These might be the strangest of all. Prions are infectious agents that have no genetic material whatsoever. No DNA, no RNA, nothing. They are just misfolded proteins. And somehow they can cause other normal proteins to misfold just like them, triggering a chain reaction that leads to terrible diseases. It's mind-bending stuff. So after that whirlwind tour from complex kingdoms all the way down to these not quite living things, you might be wondering, okay, but why does all this sorting and labeling actually matter? It's a fair question, and the answer gets to the very heart of biology. And this is the main takeaway. A good classification system isn't just about putting things in neat little boxes. It's so much more than that. It's a family tree for all of life. It shows us the evolutionary relationships between organisms, who's related to whom. It literally helps us map out the incredible, sprawling story of life on our planet. You know, that story is still being written. This system is always being updated as we learn more. And today, with our ability to read DNA, we're discovering connections we never even dreamed of. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, as we keep exploring that genetic code? What new kingdoms, what new branches on the tree of life are we about to find?